Okay, let's get on to the next point of information here. We had another mailbag question. Joe forwarded this to me today. Do you have the tweet, Joe, that we can bring up here? I'm sure maybe Conan. I don't know if Conan saw this because you've been off social media.
I feel like I'm in an episode of TMZ right now.
No, this is funny. This is good to have you on here because this is an interesting one too.
Okay.
This is from Jay from subject is Jay from Norman, Oklahoma. How legit is Lucha Blog? Hey guys, day one listener and Patreon member here, and I've loved every bit of the content over the years. I hear Conan burying Lucha Blog in the podcast multiple times, saying he doesn't know his stuff. But Larry Dallas, and the guy puts in parentheses, please replace him with Hugo on the Lucha Libre Minute full time.
Oh, look at that.
Parentheses, has used him as somewhat of a source of information. Kevin Kelly mentioned on Collision Commentary that he got notes from Lucha Blog, and now Tony Khan says Lucha Blog actually influences some of his Lucha booking in a tweet. Do you have the tweet, Joe? Here's the tweet.
It's on the screen.
Yeah, Tony said, a lot from what I learned about Lucha Libre, I learned from your blog. He's quote tweeting Lucha Blog. In 2002, I started watching a lot of Lucha on satellite and tapes and read your blog and DVD-VR to catch up and learn. So you've definitely been a major influence in my promoting and matchmaking choices. #AEW Collision. And at the end of the yeah. So what do you guys think about this? Hugo, like you know who Lucha Blog is, right?
Yes.
Okay. What is your guys' take? Because this is okay. I see the Mark community that they're kind of giving this guy respect, but I've heard Conan say the guy's just a fan.
Listen. I don't know if you get to see me because I see the tweet there. I don't know if you get to see me right now, but this will be my first impression. My first impression would be this. Because
you can take the tweet down, Joe.
I mean, this is so ridiculous. Look, because for an aficionado, Lucha Blog, it's okay. It's like a English 101, Spanish 101. But for what upsets me, and that's why you have WWE and AEW having the worst Spanish broadcast team. And I could say it, not because I work for AAA, but Conan will tell you the freaking truth. And Guillen and myself and Carlos and I, we kicked it with passion and everything. So when Tony Khan says that he learned and this inspiration, I don't care whoever else says it, but when the owner of I think they rank it now like a $2 billion company, which I think it's off charts, a predator off charts. But anyway, just having a man that owns NFL teams and owns AEW and has a team in England of soccer. It scares me that he will take Lucha Blog as a source of understanding, first, the culture. I'm Spanish, but it took me like 2 years and open up my ears to listen the psychology from Conan.
Tony, you want to chime in on this while we're waiting for Hugo back? What's your take on that tweet?
Well, let him finish. I mean,
he'll be back.
Okay. Yeah, Hugo, I don't know if you can hear us.
Maybe the Martians came for him.
You blacked out here. We can't hear you.
You know.
Okay, let me go. Hugo, you dropped out. You said
for about 40 seconds.
For like 2 years, and then you said Conan, Conan. You had experience like 2 years in the bit. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. It's like it took me to 2 years and listening to Conan because he was a star there, and then he did a transition into a creative mind. And even for a guy that has done wrestling all over the world, English, Spanish, you have to learn it. I'm still learning the culture of lucha, and I will still keep learning because that's the way you do business. That's why WWE and AEW have such a Spanish industry, because they don't know what the heck they're doing. They think if you speak Spanish, you could go on the headset and talk. But it's an insult. And trust me, I think the best of Tony, I worked his first 2 pay-per-views. As a matter of fact, Cody gave me I didn't even know, he was in the middle of the ring. I was on a pay-per-view for AAA, interviewing him, and he gave me a kiss and said, "You invited to our first AEW pay-per-view." So I worked for him on the first 2 pay-per-views. Everything that I heard of him and the way he treated me was nice. But business-wise, when he says that he learned all this from Lucha Blog, it scares me, because Lucha Blog is like English 101, for beginners. But if you're going to
I'm gonna add to that. And I'm going to be very fair here, because I don't like them personally, but I'm going to put that to the side. Here's the problem, and you're going to understand this real good because, okay, so when Tony was reading Lucha Blog 10 years ago or whenever he started reading it. I don't even know how long they've been around.
2002,
right?
he said. He's been listening to it.
2002, so 20 years. Right. I didn't find out about them till like 2012 or something like that. Jack Evans was the one that told me about it. So besides The Observer, which was probably the only publication, tell me if I'm wrong, Hugo, because you probably would follow this too. Besides The Observer, which covered Japan and, WWE, and they were the only ones that followed Lucha Libre. There's nobody else that was following Lucha Libre in the United States like The Observer was. That was it. Okay. And this is why I always put Dave over for this, because when I was doing Lucha Libre shows in Tijuana, like in the early 90s, Mike Tenay, I'm assuming he lived in California at that time. Mike Tenay, Dave Meltzer, Tenay's wife, some other guys, they would all come down all the way to Tijuana, and Meltzer lives in San Jose. Okay. So they would come down there watching Lucha before anybody knew about it. Like when UFC first started, Meltzer was the first one to jump on that UFC wagon. So they were ahead of their time. Nobody else was giving Lucha any play except maybe a couple paragraphs, right? And it was probably from somebody that told them about it, because you could tell by the way they wrote, they weren't watching it. So here's the thing, Disco. When Lucha Blog came out, it was the first publication or website, however you want to put it, that was in-depth into Lucha. They didn't talk about WWE. They didn't talk about Japan. They only talked about Lucha. So if you liked the Lucha, if you're an American that liked the Lucha, besides Meltzer, this was the place you went, because the whole thing, like if there was a luchador doing good in Japan or doing good in WWE, they would follow that. And they have, good interviews, and they put up all the lineups. Sometimes I've had to go up. I've forgotten lineups and I have to go there and look for it. But here's the problem to me. So they were the only ones around. There was nobody else around, So it's almost like they won by just default, So everybody that liked Lucha, wanted to learn about Lucha, followed Lucha Blog. See what I'm saying? And my problem is this guy is American or Canadian. I'm not sure. He doesn't live in Mexico, so he doesn't understand the cultural differences. A lot of times from stuff that was sent to me, he would say, oh, this doesn't make sense. And I'm like, bro, everything that we do in AAA, Hugo's at the production meetings. He knows everything that happens in AAA. Every storyline is explained in either a vignette, an in-ring, or the commentators, and sometimes all three. So there's no way you can't know what the is going on. So I always thought to myself, okay, either his Spanish not that good enough for him to understand the promos and commentary, or whoever he has translating for him doesn't know what he's listening to. But he would write in a way where AAA and or me sounded like we didn't know what we were doing. Thus, the guy that's reading it thinks the same. Are we disorganized? Yes. That's not going to change. Right now, we're restructuring that finally. But they would, let me see, what else did I want to? So basically, my train of thought. So here's the thing. So you've got a fan, Disco, right? A fan who's watched a lot of Lucha for 20 years, right? 30 years, and he's got little correspondents that give him news. Bro, I broke all sorts of, to this day, it still stands. I broke all sorts of box office records in Mexico City and Tijuana. I was trained by one of the best minds in the business, Antonio Peña. I was in creative. I've been in creative over 20 years. I've seen or been part of or written some of the best angles in Mexican history. How the could this guy know more than me?
No, he can't. Let me make a point. I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Right.
All of us, me, you, Hugo, before that we got in the business, we were all fans, marks, okay? But then we make the sacrifice, we get in the business, okay? I knew a lot about wrestling before I got in the business because I watched a lot. I was in Atlanta. I got 7 hours of TV every Saturday night on the Super on Joe Pedicino had the 7 hours from 7 different parts of the country. I had WOR, USA, WCW Saturday night, everything. So there was just tons of wrestling I saw. So I kind of knew, and I was a good guy that was into the angles, everything. But I didn't until I got in the business. I didn't really learn anything. Like there was nothing as a fan from watching all that stuff that I could influence. Whether I could just sit there and say wow, that was a good idea. Hey, you know what they should do here? What if this guy did you think an angle out? You give an idea. And I when I was in booking, when I was in creative, I don't care where, a good idea is a good idea. I don't care where it comes from. A fan can have a good idea. Your mom can have a good idea. Like your cousin can have a good idea. They might not be the business, but everybody can have a good idea. Like, but like the thing that's funny here is that there's no way if Tony's like actually like say is like I'm influenced by all the marks and the dirt sheet forum guys. like they're the ones that have influenced my decision making and my booking. It's like, dude, it's like, you got in the business, you've got a lot to learn, but you're in the position where like you're the head, you're the boss. There's nobody teaching you anything. There's nobody, like, you're not learning from anybody unless you're soliciting, from like the, and then from what I hear, and this is, sad to hear, bro, you have all those guys like Jake and Arn and stuff, and I hear Tony doesn't really lean on these guys for stuff. Right. It's like you're admitting it's like you're listening to like this Lucha Blog guy is like you're giving credit and to on the end. It's like,
and that's really important because you're as smart as the people around you. You don't need to be the smartest guy in the room. You need to be able to hear good ideas and go, that's a good idea. Let's use it. You know what I'm saying? That's not a good idea. We'll use it later. Or I'm not going to use it at all. When George Bush, who I thought was an idiot, when he walked into the room with Cheney and Rumsfeld and Condoleezza, bro, you had to respect them because they knew their. You know what I'm saying? And let me piggyback up. And let me piggyback up for something you said, because this happened to you and it happened to Hugo and it happened to all the boys, bro. Your first 2 or 3 years in wrestling, I don't give how fast you pick up stuff in the ring. You're literally like, you don't know what is going on. It's politics. It's dressing room behavior.
Stuff
it's
you never would have thought of as happening. Like,
right.
That never would have been on your mind ever.
Once you're in the business, you're exposed to like, oh, this is how you do this. But let me take it a step further, because us three have been in this position. Bro, how much more, and we thought we knew it all, how much more did your eyes open up where you were in actual creative meetings? That's a whole nother world.
Yes.
Right?
Well, one example.
That's like when you really learn the business.
Yeah, the last match, Ric Flair's match, Rick wanted Carlos and I to do the Spanish on his last match. And we got to sit on a production meeting with people from, I don't know, every office almost. And just to hear some thoughts that normally would not happen on one company, hearing the minds from different companies, I thought for me was really educational. Even though it was for one independent show, Rick's last match, just that experience made me think, wow, what could a business be if there were more, people that were willing to learn, and everything is a process. Right now, if you have the money, you run your own independent shows, and then you think you're bigger than everybody else, and then you make all those mistakes 3 years after you have no money.
Now, Disco, I'm going to ask you a question. When was the first time you sat in on a booking meeting? Was it in WCW?
WCW.
What year would you say?
No, wait. What about TNA?
No, that's before WCW.
He was in WCW before he was in TNA, dude. He worked with Russo. Okay, so
with Vince and Ed,
what year was this? So you'd been in the business around how long?
I'd been in the business since '92, so it'd been like 7 years.
4 years? 7 years?
No, 6 or 7 years. Yeah.
Okay, bro, you've been in 6 or 7 years, so you already kind of know what's going on. How much more did you learn that you had no clue about when you were in those booking meetings?
Let me tell you something. I didn't really learn a lot from Vince and Ed and stuff. I learned more from like Terry.
Right.
And so, because Terry had been like Vince and Ed were just like writers,
Terry was very detailed oriented. He was very
detailed that. And like just the way you structure things, What I
learned.
Go ahead.
I would see him get wrestlers and go, "Why do you do that? That had no logic."
Right.
Why are you doing all this just to get there when you could have just done one move? Like he was very
good with psychology, very smart. Right. But Vince and Ed were just right. Vince and Ed were like just writers with ideas, but they showed me how you structure a show, the outline and stuff. How to we get the written show and you see like I learned how to if you're writing a show, they gave me the blueprint of how to write a show, but I didn't really learn any like ins and outs of like things I didn't know. Like Vince and Ed didn't tell me nothing I didn't know already. I learned all that from Terry, Jeff Jarrett, Dutch, just stuff.
You did learn. You did learn
because they have just a vast knowledge, and they're telling you things like perfect example. Just a little small detail here. Jeff Jarrett used to always tell me, like, and I never even thought of this. He goes, why do you think WWE main events always start off with pay-per-view main events always start off with high spots? He says because the show has been going on for a while, the crowd's kind of flat, so you always want them to get the main event. You want the crowd to get into the main event right away. So he said, like, and I never even had like thought of stuff like that, like like the main event match, you kind of have to structure away because the show's been going on for 2.5 hours, already, and now your match is going to the ring. Like, this is stuff I never would have even thought of, like that's the type of stuff I learned from like Jeff and Dutch and stuff. They would teach me that stuff, but it's like like Tony today. That's why I'm surprised when he had Jeff there, and I would have made Jeff my right hand man. Jeff, like everybody has said, well, Jeff's out for himself, as a talent. He's kind of been. He likes to get himself over, So, but for a guy that just knows what's going on, or like, he's brilliant.
Just have him not be talent. That's it.
Right. Just, I'm so shocked that he's not using him in that capacity, because I'm like, Tony would learn so much more.
Jeff is really good, and when he's working for somebody, once you let him know, hey, this is where I'm going with my guys or the girls, and whatever you think, just. This is the structure that I want you to protect and make better. He will follow that. It's just a matter of talking to him. But with Tony, it's like he has something incredible right now. He's got a company that has the talent, but whatever we complain about WWE, now it's happening to AEW. You got guys sitting at the catering room, and you get really bad stuff, and then the ratings are down, and he has no reason for. And if you let that, whatever he called that you had in Wembley Stadium, 80,000 people, if you let that thing go to your head, then you're going to have things like last Wednesday on TV. I don't even talk about it, but I get the numbers because we had one of our guys there. It was about 700 people paying for 750 people paying, and they moved the fans so that the angles for the camera. We're talking about AEW Dynamite show. After doing like 80,000 people, you couldn't even get 1,000 people. And this is like when you know that you got to go to the nitty gritty and listen to some people, like you said, to Jeff or Arn or Jake or whatever. I think that right now the problem is there's too many people that think they know what the heck they're doing, and they're not. And even
that is a huge problem. That is a huge problem across the board.
And even with Vince, as much as he sold his company for $9 billion and whatever, he made some biggies. He let Jericho go. That was a big mistake. He invested 8 years, millions of dollars, and hours of TV doing his way to build Roman Reigns. And after 8 years, finally 2 years, you get the profit back. But it was 8 years of wrong booking, wrong storylines, and finally he got it right. But in the process, it took 10 years to make a guy.
All right, let me
and
go
actually, wait, let me follow up on Hugo there, because Wednesday night's Dynamite also had a subpar crowd, as 2,667 tickets were distributed in a 17,556 seat arena.